Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me once again for another day text. My name is Greg Stafford, and we meet every weekday morning to consider a portion of the biblical record or other related texts and histories so we can better our knowledge and understanding of our past and apply it today and in our future. We're reading through the letter of James, one of the New Testament documents, and we're in the second chapter. So we're going to get started here in just a moment. I did a partial show earlier, but the sound was not set up correctly. So I'm going to redo the show. We'll get started here in just a moment. Will somebody go ahead and give me a confirmation that the sound is okay at this point? I think I made the right changes. So as soon as I get confirmation that everything is good on your end, that you can hear it okay, then we'll get started. Okay, good. I appreciate that. Sorry about it. But like I mentioned, sometimes I make changes and I don't always put it back right because I could be right in the middle of doing something late at night, like last night, and then I have to get up really early for these day texts, and I just sometimes don't quite change everything back. But I'm getting better, so that's the good news. Okay, so let's get to these texts. We're in James, as I mentioned. We're going to read verses 5 through 9. And then we'll make a brief application. I'll give a few updates and we'll be on our way. Okay, James chapter 2. I'm going to start reading verse 5. Sometimes I'll break, make a comment, or I'll just go right through and we'll talk about it afterward. Starting in verse 5. Listen, my beloved brothers and sisters, because remember, he's writing to the brothers taking the lead. So you sisters should not feel excluded just because he's addressing the ones specifically taking the lead during this time in the first century, where things were a lot different. Listen, my beloved brothers, did not God select those who are poor concerning the world to be rich in faith and to be heirs of the kingdom which he promised to those who love him? Verse 6, but you turn your back on the poor. Do not those who are rich try to control you? Do they not try to force you into courts? Verse 7, do they not slander the special name for which you were called? Verse 8, if, however, you are fulfilling a royal law, according to the sacred writing, namely, you must love the one near you, or your neighbor, as yourself, then you are living the right way. Verse 9, but if you are making inappropriate distinctions between each other, you are doing what is wrong or bringing about sin, even as you are shown to be in error by the royal law, as long as you disobey this command. So you see, the point in verse 9 is that this measure we have is so fair, so perfect, that if you're obeying that law, you wouldn't be making these kinds of distinctions because you wouldn't want that distinction and difference to be made with you. You wouldn't want other people to separate you from others because of your wealth or other conditions. You would want to be recognized because of the faith you have, not your material possessions. People in this world are very materialistic. We're all materialistic in one sense because we're material. We have to survive. So we need material things. But how much material do we need? Depends a little bit on our circumstances, the people we have to take care of. But we do not need so much that we have to look down on other people who have less. Or we have to steal from other people who have more. That's for Jah to decide. You let Jah judge those people who have wealth or don't have wealth. We don't go around as Christians and then make judgments on people because of how much money they have or don't have. It doesn't make a difference. Look at Jesus. He could have had anything he wanted, but he only took what he needed because he understood the fundamental ways in which we were made and then to rely on Jah. But of course, he was more faithful than we are. So we need to look to him, but we have to also be cognizant of the fact that we have to exist in a world a little bit differently, but without making excuses for our own bad choices. And that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about sin. Right? If you look back at verse 9, he says, if you're making inappropriate distinctions, right? You're judging people based on certain things that have nothing to do with faith. You're doing what is wrong. Okay, or bringing about sin. Remember, sin is the bad choice. Sin is the choice that we sometimes make that we weren't made to make. It's not like an option where we have a desire for a certain type of fruit, or we like certain foods, and it's our own preference and ways that we're made to accommodate. Sin is always the bad choice. It's always the thing that if you choose hurts you. Not because you're being deprived of something that's good, like the way the devil tried to trick Eve, and then of course she misled Adam. The bad choice never adds to your life. It may seem like it does. That's the temptation, the idea. Remember the idea traps that we can fall into. That's the whole point, that this temptation or desire of something we think about, but isn't actually happening the way we think about it. In other words, it's not as good as we think. It's wrong. But we keep thinking about it like it's a good thing. That's sin. It's the choosing of something we weren't made to choose, but we choose it anyway. And so we get the consequence. We get the whatever it is that follows from the choice that we keep making that's bad. So that's sin. We hear that word a lot, and it sounds, very religious in ways, but it's really simple. You're just making the bad choice, and you know it. We always know it. When we don't know it and we make a bad choice, we're not really sinning. It may still be wrong. We just didn't know it in order for it to count against us in the way that sin does when it's happening. So we all know what is right and wrong. We just choose the wrong at times because of our desire. That's the whole point of the story of Genesis, that we've been given this knowledge prematurely, before we were ready. And so we use it incorrectly. And we make these mistakes. That's why we die. But through faith in Jesus, who lived without sinning, we can, apart from sacrifices, have a relationship with God. So this is why Jesus is so important, why his coming was so necessary, in order to save us from the choices we keep making. We keep making these bad choices. And we don't have the Mosaic law and ways to appease God now, to show him we're sorry by truly giving up something material. That's what the sacrifices represented. Now we have to show it based on our faith in Jesus by doing the things that he did. One of the most important of which, was treating others the way you want to be treated. That's why you see Jesus constantly helping the people who were hurting. He's not running around spending his time with all these rich, powerful people because of what they can do for him. He's looking for the ones he can do something for. He's looking to help other people who need it. Remember what he said? The ones who are in good health don't need a physician. It's the ones who are sick who do. So he wasn't looking for the people who were, in their view, healthy. He was trying to find the sick, the poor, the lowly, the ones who truly were oppressed by the religious leaders of that time. And by others, of course. But the ones who should have been showing them the way and helping them in the right way, the Jah way, they weren't. We're not doing it, even though they had the law, the temple, and all the accoutrements, the associated things you see visually with people who claim to worship God. That's not us. We don't need that. We do it according to the things that show our belief by our actions. We'll talk more about that as we get further into James. But this royal law of treating others the way you want to be treated, it's perfect. You cannot fault it, because you're then faulting the very thing you say you want done to you. Because if that's your measure, how could it be wrong? Right? If it is wrong, then your measure is clearly wrong. It's hurting you and the other person because you're using it in the same way. It's only the hypocrites who use the unfair measure to people, and then they change it when it comes to them. They want a different standard. They don't use the same standard they measure out to others, to themselves. So they're hypocrites. They love to steal and lie to other people. But if you steal and lie to them, oh, they lose it. It's like the greatest offense ever. And they just were doing it to all these other people. They wake up and their whole life is this type of activity. But if you do it to them, they freak out, like it's the worst thing ever. Well, you just did it to that person. Yeah, I know, but I'm a hypocrite. So, that's basically what they're saying when they do that. They get all offended at the very thing they're doing to other people. That's hypocrisy. All right, let's take a look also at verse 6, because look at what it says about the rich people. Not that they're all bad, and we want to try to be successful, and we're not trying to fail in life. At least I'm not. So the consequence of success does involve money, but if you use it wisely and you help people and you keep your perspective in check, you're not going to have the kind of disposition that normal rich people have, which is arrogant. They look down on people, and you tend to think you're better just because of your wealth, which is not true. So it's an imagination. It's a fantasy that people concoct and construct around themselves and then live in until they die, and then the fantasy disappears. But look at verse 6. It says, the rich try to control you, and they force you into courts. Yet we turn our back on the poor, and they don't try to control us. They don't force us into courts. And they usually don't slander, like verse 7 says, the name we were called by which we were called, whether it's Jah or Jesus Christ. They slander them all the holy names that we use, the ones who don't like us. And so that's fine. Usually they're the ones with the money. They try to control people because they built in their mind this fantasy that will not collapse until they're done, even though it's not even there. But let them have their fun. But, if they try to control you, now they're interfering with your life. People like this. They love to control. And they're the ones usually in control. They like to control people because they're being controlled. And I've met some of the most controlled people ever, I believe. They can't do anything unless other people tell them what to do. It's one of the saddest things I've ever seen, because they surrender their entire will to other people who don't even have good intentions usually. Not from what I see. They love to control, though. Well, that's really big to them, because then they can hide what they're doing. See, when the bad people cannot control other people who aren't bad, they freak out, because they know somewhere along the line the good people who aren't trying to be bad will see what they're doing. And so they have to protect all this paranoia and all this energy and thought into protecting this fantasy that they've built up. And they'll send you into the courts, they'll sue you, and they'll do all kinds of stuff, In my case, that isn't as big of an issue, because I'll go right in there and I will defeat every one of them, because I know the truth and I know how to use it well. And I will make them pay for it, and then I will have a written testimony and record to show they lie. You see? So I can't wait sometimes to get these people into court or in a deposition, because I have so much I want to talk about and tell the world on the record about these selfish, destructive people. And that's why they don't do it, because they know they cannot deal with the truth. But they'll try to intimidate those of you who aren't as aware of what's going on, and so they do these terrible things to you. Don't worry. Jah will stand up for you. If you have to endure these things, go through it. Don't worry about any of it. Speak the truth. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Don't make distinctions. Don't view them as better than you. Don't view you as better than them. Just deal with the evidence and rely on Jah, and treat others the way you know is best. You can see the way they're treating you, misleading you, hurting other people. Oh, it's never going to end well for them. Tell me one person who's gotten away with any of that stuff. They're all dead, or about dead, right? We're next. So where are they getting this idea that they're going to get away with it? It doesn't make any sense. We're the next group. How could you possibly be thinking you're going to get away with it? You're in line. They're going to call your number soon. You're not getting away with anything. No one does. But we can be forgiven. That's the whole point of what we're talking about. Great message. So keep these things in mind. Jah did not select the rich people to represent him all the time. Sometimes, of course, different kingdoms and rulers and persons have had much wealth, but that was intentionally in order to build and promote the things at that time that were needed. Today, if we have wealth, same thing. Build and promote the things that are needed. I'm not a wealthy person, but I can work and I make some money, so I use what I can to build up our faith and help other people where possible. But I still have to deal with these same things like you, or in other ways. If they don't take me into the courts, trust me, they try to get to me in other ways. And they love the control. It's like they love that. You know why? Because they're out of control. So when they're out of control and they don't know, they're so paranoid about all the bad things, they have to try to control you because they can't feel secure any other way. I don't worry about anything. I never think about these people in those ways. I only think about them when I'm dealing with them in activities where they're trying to be selfish and steal from people. I'm talking about criminals, others, and anti-Christians, people who oppose what I do in a non-work way, but more religious ideas. So we have to deal with all kinds of difficult people. Just because certain things may not work on me or you, they'll try other things, whatever it takes, right? And behind them, we know they have spirit beings who would influence them if necessary, that will try to test you the way the devil tests Job and others were tested. But we can rely on Jah. We have to go through it anyway. There's no other way but straight through. And that's where we're going. We're going through either this life or right through the tribulation into the new world, whichever. And if we have to give up our life and rest with Jah until then, so be it. We're going forever. I'm not going for the next year, 5 years, 10 years. I have forever in view. And whatever it takes to get there, we're going. Me and you and everybody else. So help them, talk to them, encourage them, and hopefully more will respond. But do not let people control you if you can help it. If you get forced in the courts or persecuted, stand up. Trust in Jah. He will speak for you. Do not be intimidated by anyone. And whatever you do, do not make class distinctions. Try not to make distinctions. We're talking about classes now, rich versus poor, but this Sunday, I'm going to talk about racism. That is such a big problem, and it really destroys a lot of people. And it's one of the saddest things I've seen develop among the human species is this racism. You know what it really is? Racism is, we should call it hating Jahism, right? Because really all racism is disliking an image of Jah. That's it. And there may be reasons some people do things and then we attribute the things that person does to the race that we associate them with. That's not right, of course. But it leads to these kinds of things. But we were not meant to dislike people because of our race. It's the opposite. We were meant to appreciate the different races. Just like when you see the different types of creatures on the earth, what do? Oh, look at that color, look at that species, look at that type. We marvel at it, right? Well, why don't we do that to our own race, our own species? Instead, we put one against the other and we make competition and class distinctions. Oh, it's used as a weapon to divide us. I'm going to talk about this on Sunday. I'll lead into the open session with it. And it ties into our text today because of class distinctions. But really, I'm talking about race distinctions. And so we'll get more into that on Sunday. Either way, now I'm ready to face everything. And I don't even know what's coming. But I have an idea because I've had a lot of days before this one. So we know kind of what to expect, right? And if your day's just starting, go forward and do your best. If your day is just ending, reflect on everything you did, praise Jah, and when you wake up, do it again. Each day is like a whole new opportunity to do a whole new small movie. Not a garbage dump, but a real movie. Real life. And you're on stage. You're performing. and everybody's watching. So do the best things you can. Because the one who matters the most is the one who's looking at us to determine where we stand. So let's show him, and let's show everybody, so that they recognize us when they call us to account and when that day comes. Either way, I'm very glad you all joined me. See, I get motivated, I get fired up just because of these texts. The Word of God is alive, exerts power, and I feel it every time that we come together and talk like this. So I know I've been talking about a coming Hollywood garbage dump, and I have it pretty much done. I just need to do a couple final things, and I've been a little bit busier in ways that have made it harder for me to finish. So I do have a Hollywood garbage dump coming on Toy Story 4. Open session 3 this Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I hope you'll join me. So tomorrow, Saturday, at this point, I think I'm just going to keep it open. No day text. I may do videos, and you never know. I may show up for a live video or certainly a garbage dump or something else. I'm working on different ideas and ways that I can promote the channel and our message. So stay tuned. And Monday for sure I will be back as we work our way through the letter of James. And then I will see you all on Sunday for open session 3.